everyone, this is Dennis from DJ's Classic Garage. It's not really a classic, but it's a little quick thing. If you have a modern car that has direct injection, you need to put an oil separator catch can inside that car.
In the middle of this video to kind of explain what I'm talking about being a dry intake. And that really relates to how the fuel is dispensed to the intake valves or into the cylinder. And thanks to the people at Summit for having this really awesome display of the differences between the three. Now, Summit is a great place. I don't get paid by them, but they are a great place to buy stuff. I've actually stopped at their place in Georgia. It is like Disneyland for car guys. So thank you very much for having this type of information out there so people can actually find it and be a little more educated. The first type is throttle body injection. This is a wet intake because the throttle body works just like a carburetor. It's centrally mounted, and the fuel and the air both travel down the intake manifold to reach the valves. This type of manifold cleans itself because gasoline is a universal solvent that will just get rid of all oils and grease and other types of gack that build up into an intake manifold. These were used up to the early 2000s. In some instances, it was completely gone by the early 2000s because what came next is the multiport injection. Multiport is actually pretty impressive because what it does is it shoots the fuel directly to the back of the intake valve. Now, the intake manifold at that point is dry, so you will get a little bit of buildup from this type of injection system, but the valves stay clean because the gasoline washes over them. So on this one, this is where you have to do the maintenance and use the intake manifold cleaner every once in a while on the inside of your intake manifold and clean out all that extra black tar stuff that builds up in there. And that is from the exhaust gases and that are coming out of the positive crankcase ventilation system, which is what is causing that, which then on the last style of injection is a real problem. And this has been used since the early 2010s, a little earlier than that. Like BMW was one of the first. Their engines were the first that we discovered. You had a walnut, the entire top of the valve train, because it not only went into the intake manifold, but it actually made the area where the rocker arms were turned to like a barbecue, and that is not good for the car. What happens to inside the intake manifold is that you get just buildup of almost a tar-like carbon. It goes from either tarry or kind of like charcoal, and it builds up not only in the intake manifold where you can clean it with throttle body cleaner, but no, it gets on the back of the valves and actually gunks them up to where they don't actually work properly. And that's why it's so important that you have this catch can, or air oil separator, I guess is the real technical term for it, where it takes out all the liquid from the air going back into the intake manifold to help ventilate the crankcase. Because you have to ventilate the crankcase because you have to equalize the pressure inside the crankcase. It's very, very important. This has been going back to when engines were starting to be built. There's pressure in the bottom of the crankcase because of the rotation of the pistons and the crank shaft. So these things really do make a lot of disturbance of air, and that needs to be vented out. Otherwise, it'll blow through the rings, and it's very bad. That's why every car needs a PCV system. You have to have it. You can't do that, otherwise you'll blow the oil dipstick out. It will build a lot of pressure up. Back to the dry intake manifold, though. So now, on a lot of cars, like all the Hemis from Stellantis, they're dry, and especially a high performance car, you're really going to get a lot of oil and just leftover fumes and gack They come up, and it's going to basically make that engine run terrible. And it won't take long, maybe 20,000, 30,000 miles, and it will run really bad. So if you have any type of engine that is direct injected, you need to do this. The Bronco that what this happened on, not really driven hard. It's driven very easy, and it had almost a half a cup of fluid that was in there in 5,000 miles. Now back to the rest of the video.
I'm going to show you this. This is a Bronco we have, 2022, the 4-cylinder that's only direct injected. Put a catch can on it after 5,000 miles. That is really, really hot. Look at the amount that would have gone into the intake manifold. All that would have gone in the intake manifold and never been cleaned because it's a dry intake manifold. So, no matter what type of car you have, if it's a modern car and you want to keep it, you better put one of these catch cans on here. The Bronco one's kind of wild. I know that on the Hellcats and the 5.7 Hemis and 6.2 Hemis, or actually any of those, are all dry intakes. So you need to put this on your car. This is about 5,000 miles, and I would say it's almost a half a cup of gack that would have gone in the intake manifold. Well, hopefully that's helpful, and remember to take out your classic car, because it makes someone's day, including your own.